Hey, my name is Lisa Langell, and I am here on the beautiful Kenai River. I'm at Marlowe's on the Kenai, where I run my Alaska workshops every summer. It's my favorite place to be. I love being here. But if you'll notice, the sky is a little bit cloudy today, and it's actually been raining a little bit. And so what I want to talk to you about today is what to do when you're on your next workshop or tour and it's a little bit crappy, right? So I'm always about, there's a photographic opportunity in everything, and the soft light can really, really help. And in Alaska, when it's the land of the midnight sun, we get 16 to 20 to 22 hours of sunlight. And so the diffuse skies are wonderful, but sometimes you're just in a situation where you need a little inspiration, and I want to give you some today. So one of the things I want to talk to you about today is not only using this light, but I'm going to give you some ideas to think differently about how you memorialize your next tour or workshop or location or vacation, or even in your own backyard or hometown, and give it a little bit of a different feel than how we traditionally shoot things. So I'm a big fan of creating collages or galleries of images that work together to hang on the wall, whether you're in an office or home environment or what have you. And I also really love commemorating my workshops and tours and vacations and those kinds of things in different ways. So we're going to start out learning 3 different ways, 3 different locations where I can help you learn how to do this. So the first location I'm going to start with is right here. And so in this location, we've got a beautiful river, the Kenai River, world famous river. And if you notice, you can see some clouds behind me that have a little bit of texture to them. We're going to learn how to use that texture and create some really cool images. I'm also going to show you how to create those collages by thinking differently on the things that are around you. We're not going to be thinking about photography in very traditional terms. I want to give you a little inspiration and some different ideas and takeaways that you can create some looks that are interesting, beautiful, and appealing to the everyday consumer. So let's get started. The best way to do this is to start with your inspiration first. Think about the size, the number of images, and the location that you're going to be hanging the gallery of images, and then go shoot for that size, that space, and that place. So one of the things I want to show you today is thinking about simplifying your images and shooting in high key style. So high key style is one of my favorite things to do, but you're going to be using skies like this to do it, which are perfect for this. So for example, one of the things I want you to do when we collect these collages is look for things that have high key potential. High key meaning very light and bright skies and a very defined subject. So we want to blow out those skies. So see this tree behind me here? Simple elements of this tree, if you zoom in with a long lens and then overexpose, are going to create a high key look. Now, I'm not saying that this is going to go and win a contest, but together in our collage, it's going to create some really nice pieces that go well together. So with collages, one of the things you need to understand is that it's not about every picture being a contest award-winning picture. In fact, collages come together because they team up together. So if you have 5 or 6 images in a collage, for example, you might have 1 or 2 that stand out, and then the rest complement it. So you don't need every picture to be a contest award-winning picture. You need it to be well done, but they need to complement. You need detail and close-ups, and then you need to pull back and have bigger scenes. Very simple subjects work together. You can't have a lot of complex things on the wall. You need very simple subjects, clean lines, and they all need to go together. So we're going to start with that. So one of the first things I'm going to do is shoot some leaves and the branches of this tree in high key, and that will give us some details to add to our collage. All right, so I have my high key image here. High key meaning that I overexposed the background because the sky was hazy and cloudy, and I wanted to make it pure white in camera, and that also brought out the details in the leaves. Now, I like to get a little more creative than this, and so I'm going to apply a little bit of a treatment to my image and make it look a little bit more vintage. So you can see the original here, and here is the one that's a little more of a vintage look. I just changed some color tones and added a background that was cream and just had fun with it. The sky's the limit for what you can do with these types of things, but in a collage, best practice would be to keep the theme consistent. So if I do this for one, I should probably do them for all of them in the whole collage. Otherwise, it looks very piecemeal. One of the secrets of collages is that you have simple color palettes. You don't want a lot of different colors going on because it looks way too busy. Think about the composition of the whole thing, and that's going to help you keep it simple and keep a unified look so that when I put it into my gallery, we can start to see something that'll come together and everything will have a similar palette and feel. So this is my first image. We've got 4 more to go. By the way, I do have an idea for what I want for this main image here, but we've got a long ways to go before we get there. And we're going to do it all in an hour. So this is definitely something you can do when you're pressed for time and you really want to do something creative. So let's take it to the next step. Okay, so I'm here at the Marlowe's and I'm looking for things that I can shoot in high key that have strong contrast and line and can be a focal point and larger part of my collage. Because in collages we have some bigger pieces and some smaller accent pieces, and they all need to work together. It's like having a chorus. Everybody's got a job and a role, but not everybody can be the lead singer. So this tree, for example, this spruce tree, we can shoot in high key as well. If I position myself correctly, those clouds, which are starting to part and we're getting some blue skies, but the right angle, I can start to shoot that high key and get a stronger subject. And we're just going to shoot the top half of the tree. Okay, I have my spruce tree. I've overexposed. I've let that sky go white and I've brought out the detail and the color of the subject. But I'm not done here. And yes, it's a very simple subject, the top half of a tree. Most photographers are probably looking at this right now and thinking, Lisa, you've got more in you than just the top half of a spruce tree. Yeah, I probably do. But again, when we're doing collages, it's not about every image being this breathtaking, award-winning calendar or magazine level photograph. It's about telling a story with the collage. And a lot of times your simplest images are going to be the ones that carry off that theme and that story. So today is about the forest in Alaska, and I'm going to be using this pine tree as one of my main images. What I've also done is I've taken that image and we are going to add a treatment to it. So I'm going to change the colors and the palette, and we're going to bring it so that it's more of that vintage style like what I had in the previous image of those leaves. And we're going to take it and put it in the gallery. Now, the fun thing about these galleries or these collages that you're putting together with your images is that you get to personalize it according to the things that are most meaningful to you or most memorable from your trip. So I've been picking some beautiful trees and things because I think it depicts so much of what Alaska is about, the beautiful spruce trees and the growth each spring. But I have to pick a moose because they're just adorable, and they're one of the things that I love about springtime in Alaska. And this moose is just a baby. And it happened to be right outside our lodge the other day. And so I'm going to add this to my composition. And we are going to make this a little bit more of a vintage look again. So if you can see, here is the original. And then I've just added a little bit more of a vintage tone. It's not necessarily true to real color. It's a little bit vintage. There's the original. There's the vintage version. And then we're going to add that to the collage. Okay, I've added this to our collage or our gallery, but there are a couple things to pay close attention to. You want this to be balanced. So for example, I put the moose on the lower right-hand side and the tree is in the center. Now the tree looks beautiful centered, but unless we have an image that's a little darker with a little heavier, stronger subject in the upper right-hand side, this may end up looking lopsided. So it's important for you to think about your collage in that way. And note as well, when I go out into the field, I have to be thinking in this collage about doing something with all vertical shots. So you may have some great things that are horizontals that aren't going to work here, or you need to rearrange your collage into an arrangement that will actually work for both verticals and horizontals together. The infinite combinations can be used. You just have to think about it carefully. And worst case scenario, you decide you can change your moose, and instead of putting it in the lower right-hand side, you can swap it for the tree or anything else. In this case, if the moose is most important to me, I've decided to change the layout, and we've put the moose in the middle. And it looks great, and it'll help keep a little bit more of a balanced look in this image, providing that we keep lighter, simpler images on the left side. In this case, I've photographed a simple pine tree, and I wanted to take the pine cones and focus on those. Those are a nice contrasting subject against a high-key background. Again, using those clouds and all of that wonderful gray sky that's often frustrating for regular photography, but great for high-key photography. And I'm just going to take these details and include them in my gallery. You can see our gallery is coming together quite nicely. I've got on the upper right-hand side, the tree bending in a little bit. On the lower left-hand side, the tree bending in this way, and it just pulls your eye more towards the center. I've got a lighter subject here that's really nice and contrasty. I could put something over here that would be nice, or an abstract, or anything else. What I want to avoid, though, would be something really strong like this. We don't want another animal that's a pretty dominant subject. It should be an abstract, or maybe a simple landscape, something in the distance, clean, simple lines, and something that will add to this. It could be leaves, it could be ferns, anything that just ties together the theme, and then we're going to be using the same processing for that one as well. Okay, I have chosen this image because it's a little bit different from everything else. It has strong interest, but a simple color palette. And then I've added that vintage technique to it to just soften it and make it a little bit more painterly and old-fashioned. It reminds me of an old-fashioned cabin in the woods, and that's the look and feel that I've wanted, almost sketch-like. So we're going to use this as the final image in our collage. Okay, our collage is finished. And again, you can always swap them out if you decide something later on in your trip works out even better. You can mix and match and add to the combination or extend the combination with other images. The sky's the limit. And the main point about this is often you'll come back from a trip and you'll have a couple of really favorite shots. But if you want to tie all of it together, sometimes it's really nice to tell a story about the woods and then the animals and just tie in the simple color palette. And this is nice because the simple color palette doesn't compete with other things in the room, and it just keeps it simple and beautiful for the room. And all of these images, aside from the moose, were all images that I shot when there's nothing to shoot, as many people would say. They're simple images on gray days, just little details in the area. Nothing is award-winning in and of itself. And I feel funny saying that as a photographer because we're always trying to aspire to take incredible images. But I want you to realize that there's a time and a place for these simple images, and they can really work well in a collage or gallery for the home. It's a different kind of thought process than our traditional photography, but it can be so much fun. So I hope this was helpful for you. And then I'm going to show you how to do it with a different scene. So stay tuned. We're going to talk about that collage in a moment. All right, I'm here again on the Kenai River, and one of the things that I want you to be thinking about is shooting texture. So see the water behind me and how reflective it is? Capture that, zoom in with a long lens and capture that. Or if I tip this up, look at the beautiful skies behind me. Take some of those gloomier skies and create some texture with it by photographing close-ups of those skies and the cloud patterns. We're going to use those textures in just a moment. We're still in Alaska, and if you only had an hour at the beach with some eagles and beautiful views, and you wanted to create a collage, I'm going to give you some tips on how to do it. Again, I'm not talking about having to need hours and hours and hours somewhere, but if you look at all the details and the main subjects, you can really create some beautiful stuff. So we're going to photograph eagles. We're also going to photograph textures, and we're going to photograph a few abstracts and things on the beach and create a beautiful collage. Okay, I'm in Alaska, and sometimes you really do have some fantastic moments, like this high key image of an eagle landing. So high key means that it's very light and bright and typically a pure white background. This is done in camera if the conditions are just right. This is not a Photoshop cutout. So anyhow, I want to add some texture to this image and create more of an artistic vintage style image for the wall and for our collage. So the first thing I can do is I can add the texture from our sky that we created. And if I add that texture, I can take this image and I can take the opacity back a little bit. And I can even go in and change the blending mode. So the blending modes change the look of that layer and how it interacts with my image. So maybe I like linear burn, color burn, darker color. I think darker color looks really nice. So we can choose a darker color, and then we could go ahead and mask it if we want to. I'm not going to worry about that too much yet. But then what I'm going to do is show you how a texture would work on top of that. Now this texture is too strong at the moment, and that's okay. We're going to change it. But here is what that texture looks like normally. Here it is. So this second layer that I'm adding is a piece of rusty pipe that I photographed out on the beach. And so this pipe, this excerpt of the pipe that I photographed close up, is going to be our second texture. So again, I can leave it as normal and change the opacity back, or I can start to play with the blending modes. So I'm going to leave the opacity at about 64% right now and go in and see what the different blending modes do to my image, and then I can change the opacity up or down depending on what I like with the image. So I'm going to try to choose linear light and bring my opacity back to maybe 20%, 20 to 30%, see if I like that, and then change it again and just see if there's anything else that I'm missing that I might like more. But I'm thinking that's going to be that I want, the one I want, the linear light. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab a mask and just going to pull out a little bit of the texture in and around the eagle. So I'm going to use a mask to do so, black paint, and we are just going to take out a little bit of that eagle. Now I can use black paint, but I don't want to do it at 100% opacity. I want to just remove a little bit of that layer at a time. So I'm changing my opacity down, pulling in some of the eagle, and giving that look that I want. And if you don't like it, what's cool about a mask is you can change it to white and you can bring it all right back the way it was. So let's try with this layer. I'm just going to take that blending mode and leave it at linear light, but blend this back a little bit. And then take my cloud layer, blend the opacity, take that opacity back a little bit, and get a nice little blend of these two images. So I'm going to take that, I'm going to use my mask tool, I'm going to just pull out a little bit more on that eagle. We kind of almost have this woodsy, interesting painterly look in the background. So you can mix and match and stack these textures really nicely in your images. And I like to look for textures and photograph them when I'm out in the field and I don't have any action, because I can come back and use them years and years later and change them and change the color, change the opacity, change the texture. You've got all kinds of things you can do with these textures and then add them to my images and create a more vintage, beautiful look. And so that's one of the ways that you can use textures. So when you're somewhere and there's not anything immediately that you can see that comes to mind to shoot, start looking around for different details and textures and abstracts. So I captured this image on the beach, and what you're seeing with this lighter area is an area where water's already flown through the image, and it's left these rocks and this interesting smoother texture. So I let these little rivers show through at a diagonal, And if you look at the original image that I captured, it's very blue toned, and that's because it was shot on an overcast day. So I left that bottom layer the original bluish tone. I've duplicated the layer and warmed up this color, and then what I'm going to do, and you could leave it this way, but I am going to mask out some of the blue and have it show through. So I just added a mask. I've got my brush, I've got my black paint, and my opacity is set to about 28%. And I'm just going to bring back a little bit of that blue. And every time I click, it removes a little bit more of the warmer tone and replaces it with the bluer tone. Now, I'm doing this in a live video, so I'm not being as perfect as I might be if I was finishing the real piece, but you get the idea. And what this does is it brings in a little bit more of a warmer tone with the cooler tone and creates a little bit more unique look. Take my opacity back and just pull that through. And now we have the warm juxtaposed with the blue. And we've got our image. Now, why do I want to do this? Well, I have a vision in mind for this eagle where we're going to tie in the simple sepia color of the eagle with some warm and blue tones and create a really pretty composition for the room. So this is going to be my second image in my composite. This image is a close-up of a piece of driftwood. So this abstract image has some blue and sepia tones in it already, but I can actually bring that blue out a little bit more by just saturating the blue. There's multiple ways that I can do this. I could either grab my sponge tool and generically saturate the blue parts, or I could go in and pull out specific blue in the in either your Camera Raw or Lightroom or other tools where you just adjust blue tones. So I'm just saturating the blues in here a little bit more than they're already saturated. I'm leaving the browns alone, and then we're going to use this as part of our composite or our gallery. The reason why I want to do this is the blue and the browns complement each other. They're complementary colors, and we're going to tie in the same theme throughout the entire composite. My last image utilizes another simple abstract of driftwood, which is all found on the same beach that the eagle was flying on, and ties in the theme together. Now, because the eagle only has sepia and off-white colors in it, I need something to balance that. So this particular image has some of those same tones, but does not include the blue. So we have two images with warm tones in blue and two images with just the sepia, and those arranged together make a really pretty look. It gives you a little bit of color, but not too much, and it's not so matchy-matchy. And while we're photographing the forest, take a look at this beautiful birch tree. It's got lots of lovely texture. It would be great for a macro with some of the fungus and lichen on it, as well as the texture and the pattern in the bark. Grab these shots, they make for some great detail work in our collages and help represent the place where you're actually taking these shots from. It's subtle, but it's beautiful, and it shows that you appreciate and attend to the details, not just the big grand landscapes or wildlife in the area. Photographing bark, both the birch bark that I just showed you, as well as some pine bark that was a little bit decayed and revealing some of the wood underneath, really creates beautiful texture and color. Now, the birch bark blends in nicely with the wall behind it, but it's still distinct enough because of the contrast that you get some background from image separation. Yet it's not too busy as far as the color palette goes. However, you can always mix and match these to your heart's content. We could take away the birch and we could add other colors of bark and get a completely different look. So the more you mix and match, the more fun it can be. So these are three simple ways that you can utilize stuff that's right around you when the wildlife isn't wild and the skies aren't beautiful and you're still looking for things to do. You can capture some really great things and make some great art out of it. All of these things I did in less than an hour. Simple to do, easy to find, and you can really have a lot of fun with it. I really hope this was helpful for you. I love creating art in inspiring ways with nature, and I hope this gives you some ideas for the future. Thanks so much for being a part of this session today, and I look forward to seeing you out in the field in the future. Have a wonderful day.